Rain hammered the alley behind the diner, and Aaliyah froze mid-step when her flashlight hit something that didn't belong there. A white man, bleeding badly, lay slumped against a brick wall, and tucked beneath his soaked coat were two newborn babies, crying so hard their tiny voices shook the air. Aaliyah's breath caught. This wasn't just danger. This was a nightmare someone abandoned on her doorstep. If this already made your blood boil, tap like, and subscribe so you don't miss stories where justice finally wins. Aaliyah stepped closer, her sneakers splashing in cold puddles. "Sir? Hey, can you hear me?" The man's head tilted, eyes barely open, lips trembling. "Please, don't call the police," he whispered. "They'll take my babies." His babies. Aaliyah stared at the two tiny faces pressed against his chest. One coughing, one whimpering, both freezing. She slipped off her apron and wrapped it around them. "Oh my God, they're ice cold." The man tried lifting his hand, but it fell uselessly. Blood soaked through his shirt, dark and steady. This wasn't a scratch. Someone meant to kill him. Aaliyah instinctively reached for her phone, then stopped. The last time cops helped her family, her mama ended up in a jail cell for a crime she didn't commit. These babies wouldn't survive another minute waiting on anyone. Okay, I got you," she whispered, though her voice shook. "We're getting out of this alley." She hooked her arms under his shoulders, tried to lift him. He groaned but didn't fight her. The babies cried louder. Rain hit harder. Her fear grew heavier, because this alley was behind a diner that everyone used, and still nobody came outside. She dragged him toward the street and banged on the nearest apartment door. A lock clicked. A tired voice snapped. "What you want?" Aaliyah pleaded. "I need help. He's hurt, and these babies." The door slammed in her face. One floor above, someone peeked through their blinds, saw her, and disappeared. Another window shut. Another curtain dropped. Not one person wanted to help a black woman at midnight. Not even when two infants were crying in her arms. "Fine," she muttered through clenched teeth. "I'll save them myself." She waved a passing cab, but the driver took one look at the bloody scene and sped away. Her heart pounded harder. She had no car, no backup, no plan, just a dying stranger, two newborns, and a neighborhood that wouldn't even unlock a door. Aaliyah tightened her grip on the babies. "Come on," she whispered. "We're not dying in this alley tonight." And with nothing but courage and shaking hands, she dragged all three of them toward her apartment, completely unaware that saving them would pull her into the darkest night of her life. Aaliyah was feeding the babies on her couch when the man finally opened his eyes, and the first thing he whispered wasn't, "Where am I?" It was, "Don't call the police, they'll take them. If this happened in front of you, what would you do? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. And if you stand for fairness, hit subscribe." Aaliyah froze with the bottle still in her hand. His voice was weak, but sharp enough to cut through the whole room. "You're awake," she muttered, keeping her tone steady. "Barely." He tried to sit up, winced, and fell back into the cushions. The cheap blanket she'd wrapped around him was already stained red. "You stitched me," he whispered. Aaliyah nodded. Didn't really have a choice. Bleeding man. Two babies, midnight in the Bronx, no help. "I did what I had to do." He blinked slowly, eyes adjusting to the dim lamplight. They were pale blue, too clear for someone half dead. "Thank you," he breathed. "You didn't have to." "I know," she replied. "But those kids," they were shaking. She glanced at the laundry basket beside the couch. Both babies were swaddled, finally quiet. The boy's tiny fist rested on his cheek. The girl's lashes fluttered in her sleep. Aaliyah softened. They need formula. They need warmth. They need everything. He followed her gaze. Something in his expression broke. Grief, guilt, fear, all tangled together. "Are they yours?" she pressed. "Yes." "Where's their mom?" He looked away, didn't speak, didn't blink. That silence said more than words. Aaliyah leaned forward. "Look, I dragged you through a storm and cleaned blood off my floor. I deserve to know what I just brought into my house." He swallowed hard. "I'm not safe," he said quietly. "And now neither are you." Her stomach dropped a little, but her voice stayed firm. Safe from what? He didn't answer. Instead, he scanned her small apartment. Broken heater, peeling paint, hand-me-down furniture, like he couldn't believe someone saved him at all. Aaliyah folded her arms. You're not saying much for a man who almost died. He turned his head, eyes heavy. If I tell you everything, you'll wish you'd left me in that alley. She stared at him, heart thudding. His tone wasn't a threat. It was a warning. The baby stirred, and Aaliyah picked up the little girl. Too late for wishing, she muttered. I'm already in this. The man let out a shaky breath. What's your name? She asked. He hesitated, then finally said it. Liam, a white man with an expensive coat. No ID, bleeding in an alley, terrified of police, and now whispering warnings in her living room. Aaliyah didn't know it yet, but the truth hiding behind that name was more dangerous than the wound she sewed shut. Aaliyah stepped out onto the fire escape with a garbage bag in hand, pretending to shake crumbs off it. Really, she just needed air, space to think. But the second she looked down the block, her stomach dropped. A black SUV was parked at the corner, windows tinted, engine running. No movement inside. It hadn't been there an hour ago. Aaliyah froze, fingers gripping the cold railing. New York always had cars idling, but this one, it wasn't normal. It was aimed directly at her building. She backed up slowly, slipped into her apartment, and locked the window. Liam, she whispered. He opened his eyes instantly, like he'd been half awake the whole time. What happened? There's a car outside, watching. His jaw tightened, and that alone scared her more than the SUV. What kind of car? He asked. Big, black, tinted. He exhaled like he'd been punched. They found me. Aaliyah's heart hammered. Who found you? You keep dropping these half-truths like I'm supposed to solve a puzzle in the dark. Liam tried to sit up. One hand pressed to his ribs. Can you show me? She moved to the window, lifted the blind just enough for him to peek. The moment he saw it, his face drained. That's not police. Not rivals. That's them. The baby stirred from the sudden tension in the room. Aaliyah's voice dropped to a whisper. Liam, you need to explain. Right now. He ran a hand through his damp hair, breathing hard. Not yet. Not until I know what they've seen. His answer shook her. You think they followed you? He shook his head. No, they followed the babies. Aaliyah felt cold crawl up her spine. Suddenly, bang. A door slammed in the hallway, and she jumped. She peeked through the peephole. An old neighbor arguing with someone about rent. Normal noise. But Aaliyah's nerves were fried. She took a step back, wiping sweat from her palms. This is my home, she whispered. My street, my building. Whoever they are, they don't get to scare me out of it. Liam looked at her with something close to guilt. You don't understand. If they're here, they're not leaving without taking something. The babies cried again. Aaliyah lifted the boy, rocking him softly. Not happening, she muttered. Not on my watch. Then she heard it. Footsteps outside her window. Just one pair, slow, deliberate. Her breath froze. She tiptoed back to the blinds and lifted them a fraction, enough to see a shadow moving along the brick wall, right below her fire escape ladder. Someone was out there. Someone was searching. Her voice trembled as she whispered to Liam, They're not just watching anymore. And deep in her chest, a truth settled like a stone. Saving him wasn't the danger. Keeping him alive was... Aaliyah slid the blinds shut and stepped back, her pulse thundering in her ears. Someone was outside her window. Someone was searching for them. She turned to Liam, who was now pushing himself upright despite the pain twisting across his face. You need to talk, she whispered. Right now, because whatever's going on, it's already inside my walls. Liam looked at the floor for a long, heavy second, then lifted his gaze. Aaliyah, I'm sorry. For what? For dragging you into something you should have never seen. His voice cracked, not from weakness, but from the weight of the truth he'd been carrying. Aaliyah folded her arms. Say it. He inhaled sharply. My wife was murdered. Her breath stalled. Not the answer she expected. Not even close. I found out who did it, he continued, each word shaking. And when I confronted him, he came for me, for all three of us. Aaliyah froze. You're telling me your wife didn't die from complications? He shook his head slowly. No, that's what they told the world. They needed a clean story, something press-friendly. Press, she snapped. What kind of people need a press story for a death? Liam didn't blink. People with power. People who run entire cities from the shadows. Aaliyah felt her throat tighten. Liam, who are you? He swallowed hard. My real name is Liam Moretti. The name hit her like a brick. She didn't know much about crime families, but Moretti wasn't a stranger. It was whispered in crime documentaries, headlines, cases where witnesses vanished. That Moretti? She asked, voice barely holding. He nodded. My father built the biggest crime syndicate on the East Coast. I tried to break away when my wife got pregnant. I tried to leave all of it behind. Her fingers trembled on the baby's blanket. If you try to leave, why do they want you dead? Because leaving is betrayal, Liam whispered, and betrayal gets punished. He took a shaky breath. The man hunting us, my father's right hand, wants control. He killed my wife to send a message. And when he realized my babies were still alive, the message changed. Aaliyah's stomach twisted. You're saying he wants to kill the babies. Tears pooled in Liam's eyes, raw and unhidden. He wants to erase my bloodline. Aaliyah stepped back, gripping the wall to stay steady. 2 babies, a hunted man, a crime empire, a murdered wife. And now, her apartment caught between all of it. Why didn't you just tell me? She whispered. Because knowing me is dangerous, he said. Helping me is deadly. Aaliyah looked at the babies, tiny, innocent, breathing softly. Then at Liam, broken, hunted, bleeding. Then at the window, where a shadow had been. She swallowed hard. Well, too late now, Liam Moretti, she said, her voice sharpening into steel. You're in my house. And nobody is taking these babies from me. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. Even the old radiator, usually humming like a tired uncle, seemed to be holding its breath. Aaliyah paced the living room, checking every lock twice. Liam tried to stand, bracing himself against the wall, but his legs buckled. Sit down before you fall down, she ordered. I need to be ready if they come. She shot him a look. You can't even lift a frying pan, Liam. Let me handle tonight. He didn't argue, because he couldn't. Aaliyah grabbed the only weapon she had, a chipped baseball bat from her childhood. Not much, but enough to break something if she had to. She tucked the babies into the laundry basket, patting it with towels, then turned off every lamp until the room sank into shadows. Midnight crept in like a slow threat. Aaliyah stood near the door, bat poised. Then a sound, soft, small, but unmistakable. The doorknob turned. Once, stopped, turned again, slow and careful, like someone testing if they were being heard. Aaliyah's breath stilled. Another turn, another click. Then the latch began to slide. She didn't wait. She swung the bat with everything in her. Crack. The door flew inward and slammed into someone on the other side. A grunt, then a muffled curse. Aaliyah didn't think. She attacked. Another swing, thud. The man stumbled forward into the apartment, catching himself on the counter. Hood up, gloves on, fast train movements. Not a thief, not a neighbor, not random. He was here for Liam. Aaliyah hit him again, this time across the shoulder. He staggered backward, landing on the floor. She kicked the door shut with her heel and raised the bat again. Don't move, she hissed. The man rolled, reaching for something in his pocket. Aaliyah smashed the bat into his hand. He yelped, dropping what looked like a thin metal tool. Not a weapon, a lockpick. Footsteps limped toward them. Liam. Aaliyah, don't let him up. She planted her foot on the man's chest, pinning him. Liam's breath hitched when he saw the tattoo on the intruder's neck, a black serpent swallowing its own tail. That's Anthony's men, Liam whispered. Then he knows where you are, Aaliyah replied, or he will soon. The man groaned. You can't stop what's coming. Aaliyah leaned down. Watch me. She tightened a zip tie around his wrists, fast, unshaking, then dragged him into the bathroom and shoved him into the tub. Liam stared at her, stunned. You didn't even hesitate. Where I grew up, she said, locking the door, hesitation gets you killed. The babies whimpered. Aaliyah scooped them up, her voice softening. We need a plan, and we need it now. Liam nodded. Pain etched across his face. They won't stop, Aaliyah, not until all three of us are dead. She held the babies close. Then we make sure they fail. The bathroom door rattled once, just enough for Aaliyah to know the tied man was awake again. She ignored him. There were bigger problems outside these walls. Liam sat on the couch, hunched forward, one hand gripping his side. Sweat dripped down his temple. You shouldn't be standing, Aaliyah murmured. I don't have a choice, he said, voice hoarse. They'll come back with more men with guns with orders. Aaliyah tightened a baby blanket around the little girl. I don't scare easy. You should, Liam whispered. Aaliyah grabbed a hoodie, stuffed formula, diapers, and wipes into a grocery bag. Every move was sharp and precise, like she'd done this kind of survival packing before. Maybe she had. Liam watched her. You move like someone who's had a run before. She didn't respond. She lifted the boy into her arms, kissed his forehead, and whispered, Stay quiet for me, little man. Then she turned to Liam. Can you walk? Barely. Barely is enough. She helped him up, his arms slung across her shoulders. He winced with every step, but he didn't slow. They moved toward the back window, Aaliyah's fire escape. Below them, the alley was pitch black, except for one glowing cigarette ember far off in the shadows. Someone was waiting. We go up, she whispered. They climbed, the metal ladder groaning under their weight. Liam's breath came out sharp and painful. Aaliyah held the basket with one baby while cradling the other in her arm. They reached the rooftop and crouched behind an old chimney. From here, the Bronx looked endless, lights flickering like warning signals across the horizon. Aaliyah exhaled. We need somewhere to hide. Liam pointed toward a row of abandoned storefronts. My father used to own one of those laundromats. Nobody goes near it anymore. Good, she said. Dead places keep people alive. Halfway across the rooftop, Liam stopped. Aaliyah, what? There's something you need to know. The man who killed my wife, the one hunting us, he wasn't acting alone. She turned to him slowly. Meaning, someone close to my family betrayed me. Someone I trusted. Her pulse quickened. Who? I don't know. But whoever it is, they're feeding him information. They knew where I'd run. They knew my routes. They knew where I'd hide my kids. Aaliyah's stare hardened. So you're telling me the people after you might also know where we're going next? Yes. She looked down at the babies, tiny, trembling, innocent. Then at Liam, broken, scared, determined, and in her chest, something shifted. Resolve, anger, fire. Then we don't hide, she said quietly. We find whoever betrayed you before they find us. Liam's breath hitched. Are you sure? Aaliyah nodded once. I've run enough for 10 lifetimes. Now, I fight. Aaliyah tightened the straps on the grocery bag, shifted the babies against her chest, and looked Liam straight in the eyes. We're not running anymore, she whispered. If they want a war, they picked the wrong black woman. If you believe talent can silence every insult, share this video. And to everyone watching from the US, UK, and Canada, your voice matters. The rooftop wind whipped through Aaliyah's hair as she scanned the horizon for movement. Every shadow looked like danger. Every corner looked like a trap. But something inside her had clicked. A switch she hadn't touched in years. Survival wasn't enough anymore. Now it was about outsmarting them. Liam leaned against a chimney, pale and trembling. Aaliyah, they won't stop. Not tonight. Not tomorrow. Not ever. She adjusted the baby boy's blanket. Then let's make sure tonight is the last time they ever come looking. Liam blinked, stunned at the steel in her voice. Where did you learn to move like this? Aaliyah stared ahead. I grew up in places where the police didn't show up unless someone had already died. You learn to read shadows. You learn to fight smart. You learn to disappear when you need to and stand tall when you don't. Footsteps echoed in the alley below. Quiet, deliberate, circling the building. More were coming. Aaliyah crouched low, tapping Liam's arm. We need a diversion. Liam nodded painfully. There's an old maintenance shed on the next building. It connects to a ventilation tunnel. We could use it to draw them away. And then we go to the one place Anthony won't expect. My father's abandoned office. All the old financial logs, the coded ledgers, names of every lieutenant. It's all there. If your plan is to fight, that's how we hit back. Aaliyah lifted her chin. So we expose them. Yes, Liam breathed. We make the world see them. Another sound, a radio crackle below. They were closing in. Aaliyah positioned herself between the babies and the approaching footsteps. You ready? Liam tightened his grip on the metal pipe he'd found. No, but I'm with you. They climbed over to the next rooftop. Aaliyah moved first, carrying both babies, hands steady even as her heart shook. Liam followed, his body breaking under the strain, but his were holding firm. On the far end of the rooftop, a single light flickered inside the old maintenance shed. Aaliyah exhaled. That's our door. Liam nodded. After the night, everything changes. She looked at the children, tiny chests rising and falling. Then at Liam. Not just tonight, she whispered. For their future. Behind them, shadows climbed the fire escape. Aaliyah didn't look back. She walked forward, into the darkness, into the danger, into the fight, carrying two babies who didn't know the world wanted them gone, and a man who'd already lost everything except the truth she was helping him survive long enough to reveal. Tonight wasn't their ending. It was the beginning.